Released in December of 2022, High on Life is a comedic, sci-fi, first-person shooter from Squanch Games, whose previous titles include the 2016 VR game Accounting and the action platformer Trover Saves the Universe. An Xbox console exclusive, High on Life was a breakout hit, becoming the most played game on Xbox's Game Pass service during the week of its release, as well as being the fourth most played title on Xbox platforms overall. The game developer is notable for being co-created by popular animator and actor Justin Roiland, best known for voicing the lead protagonist in the Adult Swim animated sitcom Rick and Morty, as well as his involvement in the Hulu show Solar Opposites. Normally, I wouldn't focus much time on individuals who have been involved with the game's development, but Roiland's recent controversies of a heinous nature deserve to be discussed in this review, if only because the accusations against him may steer some gamers away from giving the game their support. In January of 2023, less than a month after High on Life's release, NBC News reported that in August of 2020, Roiland had been arrested and charged with felony domestic battery and the false imprisonment of an unnamed woman that he was reportedly dating. But this criminal history was concealed from the public for 2.5 years for unknown reasons. Quickly following this breaking news, multiple other women came forward with their own allegations of abuse, including at least one accusation of predatory behavior towards a minor. With these claims brought to light, Adult Swim announced that Roiland had been dismissed from all involvement with Rick and Morty, and his voice roles would be recast. Then, Squanch Games 2 stated that Roiland had voluntarily resigned from the company, and soon thereafter Roiland was dropped from the show Solar Opposites and Hulu's Koala Man. At the time of this review, Roiland is awaiting pre-trial, which is scheduled for late April of this year, after pleading not guilty and posting bail. Block from the editing room here. So just a day or two before this review was ready to go live, news broke that charges against Roiland had been dropped because the prosecutor believed there was insufficient evidence to achieve a conviction during trial. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that there was no evidence, just that there's not enough or not strong enough evidence that would likely convince a jury to deliver a guilty verdict. I'm not sure how much this changes, if anything. These were just accusations after all, and there are still numerous women holding to these claims. As of now, Roiland is still not associated with Squanch Games or Hulu or Adult Swim, so time will tell where it goes from here. I still think it's important to disclose this information so that you can make your own informed opinion on whether or not to support this product or his other work or not. Alright, back to the review. This, admittedly, has very little to do with High on Life specifically, but I do think players should be informed of these events, if simply because Roiland has such a big presence in this project. He voices one of the leads along with many other additional roles. His crude art style is unmistakably used to bring the alien invaders to life, and his signature humor is present in nearly every nook and cranny of this game's world. If you're a huge fan of his work, then you'll likely dig High on Life, but if his recent problems bother you, then it's also hard to ignore as his input is so abundant. His influence is certainly much more substantial than J.K. Rowling's personal interactions with the game Hogwarts Legacy after all, and you'd have to be living under a rock to not know how hotly debated that game's release was. If you're able to separate the art from the artist, which is admittedly a tricky thing to do when the controversies are this severe, then let's dive into the game itself and see how it stands on its own merit. High on Life's story begins with the unnamed protagonist's parents going away for the weekend, leaving them in the care of their older, college-age sister, Lizzie. Immediately after the parents leave, Lizzie begins planning for a raging party with all kinds of booze and drugs and drags the player away from their gaming computer to go get supplies. Suddenly, an alien spacecraft warps onto the street and the protagonist and their sibling watch as the aliens known as the G3 cartel begin to, smoke the humans. Yeah, the aliens in this game want to turn the entire human race into recreational drugs. Did you expect something more sophisticated in a game with high in its name? Anyway, after a fight breaks out amongst the aliens, the player discovers on the corpse of one of the fallen extraterrestrials a living gun named Kenny. Kenny is among a species called Gatlians, and he reveals that his race has become enslaved to be used as weapons for the cartel. With Kenny's assistance, the player snatches a warp crystal from one of the cartel's spaceships and transports their house into outer space by using the microwave. Don't even ask. Arriving in the bustling alien metropolis Blim City, the protagonist and Kenny seek the help of Gene the Bounty Hunter, a renowned fighter against the G3 cartel's operations. Unfortunately, Gene is discovered to now be too fat, lazy, and injured to directly take the battle to the cartel, thus he entrusts his powerful bounty hunting suit to the player.
Can't stop looking at that beautiful house. Okay. The gears are turning. Maybe I can help you.
You can? But you just said...
Yeah. I said I'd help you fight the... Who'd you say? The G3 cartel? Oh, yeah. Come on, that's crazy, but... Okay, whatever. Yeah, sure. We'll kill them all. Easy. I've got a fully operational bounty suit in my cart over there.
Really? Well, that's convenient.
Yeah, I could turn that hairy kid of yours into a true blue bounty hunter. But if they die, I want the house. That's the trade.
The protagonist is able to quickly adapt to the suit's abilities, if only because of their years of playing violent video games. And so they set out to rescue the captured Gatlians, stop the G3 cartel from smoking up all of the human supply, and bring peace back to planet Earth. High on Life certainly doesn't take itself seriously, as you can easily tell from this quick synopsis. The game is filled with bizarre humor, eccentric characters, and out-of-this-world scenarios. Again, if you are into Rick and Morty and other shows by Roiland, then this is likely right up your alley. Myself, I think the show's okay, but it's not something I would call myself a fan of. I've never gone out of my way to watch it, but I have stopped on Adult Swim when I've seen it on. Like so many animated shows of today, High on Life goes for quantity over quality with its humor, rapid-firing jokes at you of all varieties, from puns to visual gags, gross-out humor to simple knock-knock jokes, all with the hopes that something will land. Inevitably, something will coax out a laugh, but most of these are wide misses.
Excuse me, do you have any idea where Gene Zaruthian is?
What? That's my name. I'm Gene Zaruthian. But why would you... Oh, wait. You're probably thinking of the famous bounty hunter with the same name as me. Sorry, I'm just some loser accountant.
Oh, man. Oh, that's not good.
Okay, I guess you don't need my help.
One issue that a lot of comical video games have is that the humor often relies on making fun of video game tropes and gaming culture. These veins of comedy have been mined to near depletion, so much so that any gaming veteran can see most of the jokes coming from a mile away. You have the NPC that goes out of their way to tell you that they serve no purpose but to say out-of-context phrases, commentaries about the absurd claims that video games are solely responsible for violent use, a tutorial that mocks the very concept of teaching someone how to play a video game, achievements awarded for doing the simplest things, and so on.
I got all this great information I could share. I'm just sitting here, fishing away, waiting for someone to come over and ask me stuff. I'm just gonna whistle to myself for a bit now, till someone talks to me.
It would be funny and clever if it wasn't for the fact that I've seen this countless times by now, even in games that aren't typically considered comical. Vulgarity is also something that is quite overused in the game when trying to be funny. There are exchanges where characters speak in almost exclusive 3- and 4-letter words for seemingly no reason.
Are you kidding me? You think you could just walk up into a Mac and Cheese Brothers construction site like you're some sort of Jesus Christ and just walk around like you own the place? There's a bottomless pit over here. You think you could survive that? Falling through a bottomless pit down to the bottom? I don't think so. We got work to do.
These are like when teenagers get together and swear profusely because it's taboo and they think it makes them sound cool, but ironically comes across as just really immature. I will say though, I was surprised at how little drug culture is referenced in the game. I was expecting something more along the lines of other stoner comedies like Pineapple Express, Harold and Kumar, or even Cheech and Chong, but aside from the general premise and some small sections, you don't have to be a stoner to enjoy the comedy, and that's something that I genuinely appreciate, as that stuff has never really appealed to me. Not everything is a dud, however, so there are some exceptional gags that really do stand out. For instance, at one point you come across a space Applebee's, which is, as it sounds, an Applebee's in space, and while Kenny's trying to tell you some heavy plot stuff, your conversation keeps getting interrupted by the waiter taking your order, bringing you food and whatnot.
And after I helped him fix his ship, he wanted me to be a part of his crew, you know? And he took me with him.
And I'm back. Here we go. This is for you. All right, now what were you thinking for an appetizer?
I'm sorry, we're in the middle of something, please.
Great, it's coming right up.
Oh, I don't know why I picked Applebee's to tell you this, but where were we? Okay,
There's also this real jerk of a kid who, after berating you incessantly, dares you to shoot him, and when you do, Kenny starts freaking out because you can't do that in a video game, but reasons it's okay because he's an alien and not human, so the ESRB really doesn't care. Now that's funny.
I can see.
Whoa, what are you doing? Come on, he's just a kid. Don't shoot him.
Oh, you don't want to shoot me just because your gun said not to, just because you're your little gun. Oh, but you look how shootable I look. I look so shootable.
I am not shooting a kid.
Go ahead, do it. Shoot me, fresh meat. Shoot me. See what? You shot me. I'm dead.
All right, there. Are you happy now? Well, I didn't think we'd be allowed to kill him. Normally, killing children in games isn't allowed, but he's dead. We killed this kid. Are you happy now? We killed a kid. A kid is dead now. There goes our E for everybody rating.
In terms of gameplay, High on Life is a first-person shooter with some light Metroidvania elements. Players will visit a handful of alien locales, chasing down the dreaded cartel and opening up some optional paths to nab upgrades and collectibles. The game is structured as such where you receive a contract from Gene to hunt down one of the G3 cartel members, and then you use the warp machine to travel to their last known whereabouts. On paper, this sounds exciting and would be pretty awesome to operate like a true bounty hunter, searching for clues, interrogating witnesses, following your target's trail, but in reality you're almost always taken to a fairly linear map where you must mow down all of those that stand in your way. There are some minor diversions, such as talking to some guy to get all gooey and alien sludge, or solving these puzzles where you're rotating pipes, but it's all pretty standard. Levels do have some small optional areas to explore, and there are some passages blocked off until you obtain a certain Gatlian later in the game, but this never reaches the thrilling heights reached in Metroid or like the Arkham games. The areas are far too confined for me to ever feel like I'm really missing something, or that I'm exploring an actual extraterrestrial world. There are tons of things to obtain, should you feel the need. Honestly, I think there's a bit too much to keep track of considering the average size of the game's world. The most common thing to seek out are the sentient chests that can only be opened by using a melee attack. Often you can see them, but can't actually reach them until you get a certain ability later on. These chests usually contain money. Weirdly, the currency in outer space is the Mexican peso, with which you can buy upgrades or other necessary items. Sometimes, though, you may outright acquire an upgrade or other collectible. Trading cards, or one such collectible found in chests, are sometimes bought in stores. They seem heavily inspired by the Garbage Pail Kids, those gross cards that were ripping off the Cabbage Patch Kids in the 80s. While they do offer a bit of humor, I really like the Frasier from Frasier card, for instance. They serve no real purpose other than offering an achievement for finding them all. Occasionally, you'll stumble upon some humans in box cages, and the game encourages you to release them. It even counts the number that you save. They too serve absolutely no in-game function whatsoever. You don't even get an achievement for them, so I'd say just ignore them unless it pains your heart to let the digital Homo sapiens suffer in a cage. Warp crystals do have more of a purpose. These can be obtained from cartel spacecraft that sometimes appear in battle or by killing particular enemies. These can be traded to access optional areas in the game. The movie theater, for example, is quite amusing, letting you watch any of the game's licensed films, and the skate park lets you play a minigame that humorously mocks the Tony Hawk games. These usually contain a collectible or two within them, so at least it's optional content that's both entertaining and rewarding. When you aren't hunting down cartel members, players can explore the large hub area of Blim City. Here you have stores to buy items, quests to pick up and turn in, and a lot of humorous jokes spread about. For being one of the galaxy's largest cities, however, it feels pretty vacant at times. At a glance, it looks like a hopping place, but you really just have NPCs standing around spurting off the same dialogue over and over, and just a few places of interest. I would have enjoyed seeing a lot more variety here, maybe places opening up and closing as the story progresses, but you don't really see that happening. The house that you warped from Earth is also located here, and speaking to Jean and your sister can offer some amusement. One of the game's big selling points, for some reason, is that the developers have included a handful of real licensed movies which can be viewed in their entirety both at your home and in the aforementioned movie theater. These are all pretty awful, including such disasters as Tammy and the T-Rex, Vampire Hookers, and Blood Harvest. The developers reportedly wanted to use a few scenes from these B-movies as part of a gag, but found it much cheaper to just buy the rights for the full film, so that's what they did. The joke seems to be that Jean is always watching one of these infamously bad films and thinks of them as brilliant works of earthly art. The joke kind of falls flat though, as if you leave the room and come back, the movie just restarts itself. You never get the sense that you're actually walking in on Jean watching any of these films, but obsessively watching the opening minutes throughout the entire adventure. High on Life controls like your typical modern day shooter, with a few minor tweaks to make it somewhat unique. Like most shooters today, you have a health bar and a shield. Your shield will regenerate after a few moments of not taking damage, while your health is replenished with item pickups. In addition to your standard shooting and melee attacking, you can jump, sprint, and duck when the situation calls for it. Early in the game, you'll acquire the ability to quickly dash in any direction, very handy when trying to avoid charging foes. Later, your dash upgrades into a full-on power slide, letting you traverse the battlefield in style. At one point, you even get your hands on a short-range jetpack, which satisfies the humorous complaint in the tutorial of there not being a double jump feature.
You're gonna have to use the brand new double jump to get over there. Oh, I'm sorry, Buck. I forgot there's no double jump, just crouch. We gotta try crouching.
The Gatlians that you obtain can be fun to employ, with all but one of the 5 having both a primary and alternate attack, as well as a special trick hole ability that aids more so in exploration. Kenny is a precise pistol, and is your best bet for pulling off those oh-so-important headshots. Kenny also functions as a grenade launcher, spewing an explosive out of his rear end that can obliterate groups of enemies. Kenny's grenades can also push objects that have green slime on them for some reason, such as doors, walls, boxes, and more, giving you access to areas you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Gus is a chill shotgun-like Gatlian that is deadly at close range. Even the most fearsome of foes will at the very least be staggered by his spread shots. If you have a baddie at range though, don't worry. Gus can fire a razor-sharp disc that can decapitate enemies or penetrate weak walls to become platforms. Also, he has a vacuum function that can suck up bullets or pull foes closer to you for a much easier kill. Swayze'S is the sassy semi-automatic of the bunch, whose shard-like bullets work very much like the Needlers from the Halo franchise. While her bullets are weak individually, they can pierce any armor. Players can also trigger them to explode, and if enough go off at once, they can bring most anything down to its knees. Swayze'S best ability is undoubtedly her time bubble, which essentially freezes enemies or objects for a short time. Firing into the bubble can cause it to inflate and eventually erupt into a devastating explosion. creature is an experiment gone wrong, leaving the poor Gatlian a bit dim-witted, but also with some awesome talents. For example, he can give birth to tiny little blue men that can gang up on enemies and distract them, giving the player ample opportunity to follow up with more concentrated attacks. The blue guys can also interact with objects that are out of reach, as well as initiate temporary mind control on foes, turning cartel members against their own. Les Do It is another of the cartel's experiments, only their ruthless studies have rendered him only able to repeat his name. Fortunately, he's by far the most powerful of the Gatlians, with the capability to fire multi-targeting lasers at all enemies in his line of sight, reducing foes to a pile of steaming ash. There's also Knifey, a sentient blade that is kind of not really a Gatlian. Knifey lives simply to carve up his enemies with swift melee attacks. He can also act like a whip, stretching out to climb certain ledges or connect onto zip lines, though I have no idea why he can't function as a bladed whip during combat. Maybe in the sequel. The bad guys you'll be slaying are pretty lax, truth be told, with many seemingly lifted right out of the Halo games. Grunts are just like their Halo counterparts. They're short, weak, and utterly annoying. Unfortunately, they can go down with a single precise headshot. The Merc is a lot like Halo's Elite, and requires quite a bit more firepower to take down, although there aren't anything too fierce. Melee Mercs are much more durable and relentlessly charge after you to deal damage up close. Quickly using your heaviest hitting weapons such as Swayze'S Time Bubble is important to surviving their rage. Hunks are similar to the Hunters in the Halo franchise, though they usually don't come in pairs. These behemoths can destroy you up close with their crushing blows or explode you to bits with their powerful mine launchers. Boss battles against the high-ranking G3 members are a standout above the other enemies, however, with each having their own combat gimmicks. Whether you are trying to avoid electrified floor panels, or surviving a relentless gauntlet of baddies, or even traveling down a trippy tunnel that seems straight out of Willy Wonka, these boss fights are some of the more memorable and enjoyable sections of the game. As mentioned before, the art style of High on Life is largely influenced by Justin Roiland, and honestly, it looks pretty great. Characters are animated very well, and the world is both vibrantly colorful and strange. The 3D graphics really make it seem like one of Roiland's cartoons has come to life, and you are inhabiting its bizarre corners. The voice acting is unsurprisingly superb, with a strong cast of notable actors here to bring on the laughs. Roiland provides the voice of Gatlian Kenny, while other standouts include the hilarious J.B. Smoove, Tim Robinson, Betsy Sodaro, Michael Cusack, Laura Silverman, and Dave Herman. High on Life also manages to snag some other high-profile talent for some smaller additional roles, such as Tom Kenny, Noah North, Tara Strong, Maurice LaMarche, Maria Bamford, John and Andy Daly, no relation, Jennifer Hale, and Joel Haver. The soundtrack to High on Life is also pretty impressive. Musician Tobacco provides some trippy electronic beats that go fittingly with the drug themes of the game. The sounds he produces are dark, almost ethereal, wafting about the world like a purple haze. It really captures the dark, grimy aspects of the criminal underworld while simultaneously being chill. As the artist explains in his own words, it makes you feel paranoid, but in a good way. In the end, High on Life was a mostly enjoyable time, but certainly falls short of being something remarkable. Gunplay is brisk and exhilarating, but not nearly as polished as something seen in Doom or Halo. Levels in particular are forgettable, and their mostly linear structure wastes most of the Metroidvania influences. While there are some laughs to be had, many of the jokes are of the been there, seen that variety. If you're a huge fan of Roiland's previous work, however, you'll most assuredly appreciate more of the gags in this game than I did, and that's in large part due to the spectacular voice cast and behind-the-scenes talent. For subscribers of Game Pass, I say give this a go if it interests you in the slightest bit. Just don't expect this to be the dankest of first-person shooters. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to my channel. Also, check out my social media accounts listed on the left to keep up to date with what new content is coming your way. Lastly, if you like my content and are in a position to do so, please consider donating to my Patreon. Every little bit aids me in creating more videos like this one, and I'm beyond appreciative for all the support. As always, thank you again, and take care, everyone.